territory. So this is what we were, coming to. I think you were at the right time, right place to tell us what should be done.
Thank you, sir. When Dr. Yadav asked me to talk on this topic, actually Ramesh Hajanari is supposed to talk about cholecystectomy, but he's not here. But I'm going to give one slide on that. I had 5 discussions with Dr. Yadav. And I looked high and low for the literature, the evidence base to support a recommendation. And I'm not able to find any evidence to support the recommendations that I am going to make. But I hope it will appeal to your common sense. And if all is lost, we need a trump card. And after yesterday, my trump card is Dr. Raman. I hope he's there in the audience. In the situation of a portal cavernoma, if cholecystectomy is needed for symptomatic gallstones, Ramesh says after 9,000 cholecystectomies, it should never be laparoscopic. It has to be open cholecystectomy. And somebody who has done 9,000 cholecystectomies, they can't quarrel with that. So we go by that evidence. What about safe cholecystectomy, hepatococcygeostomy?
It is not A-level evidence.
It's not A-level. It's not
Next part
A-level.
would be.
As far as safe cholecystectomy or hepatococcygeostomy in the situation of portal cavernoma is concerned, this is not the situation of bile duct stricture, post-cholecystectomy bile duct stricture with portal infiltration. It's a different situation. This is a situation where usually a portosystemic shunt has already been done if a shuntable vein is there. And only if a shuntable vein is not there, are you faced with this situation. So we can't equate the two. But in the situation of post-cholecystectomy bile duct stricture with portal hypertension, Dr. Anil Agarwal's group and our own group have shown that a shunt is not necessary. You can go ahead and do a primary hepatococcygeostomy without the need of a decompression with a shunt. What about safety in hepatococcygeostomy in the presence of portal cavernoma? Assess comorbid illness very carefully and take consent for operation very carefully, because this is one situation where torrential bleeding in the operation theatre can lead to death of a patient. So you not only need to make sure that your patient can withstand this operation, you should also make sure that the patient can withstand the complications of the operation. And the main complication of this operation is torrential bleeding. So if your patient has got mitral stenosis and has got a dodgy heart, you probably should not be doing this operation on the patient. Remember, it's not the portal cavernoma that kills the patient, it's the operation that kills the patient as far as the patient's relatives are concerned. You should pay particular attention to coagulation profile, PT, APTT platelets, baseline screen, and a higher level screen if any of these values are abnormal. And you should not operate if there is even a marginal abnormality in these patients. You need a good blood bank, because transfusions in the range of 10 units, 15 units, very common in this operation. So your blood bank should be well versed with not only packed red cells but also component therapy, adequate supply of fresh frozen plasma, and cryoprecipitate and platelets should be available. You will necessarily have to have point of care PT, APTT platelets available if possible, but otherwise at least a very quick turnaround for these values, because dilution coagulopathy is a very big problem once you've lost large amounts of blood. Devote sufficient time for the operation, don't post it at the end of a long list, and have a evening appointment after this operation. So cancel all appointments for the day, post it first, and tell yourself that you're going to be really, really careful and patient on that particular day. Don't post it for the most junior surgeon in the group, probably the senior most surgeon in the group should do this. Binocular loops providing magnification are very useful. And if you are used to using binocular loops when you operate, it makes a lot of difference because you can see things better and that will make a difference. Be slow, patient. Use 5-0 and 6-0 polypropylene sutures liberally to control hemostasis. And after you've done the hepatocystectomy, consider very strongly the creation of a radiological access loop because very often, because of many adverse factors in the creation of this hepatocystectomy, stricture rates are definitely there, and you don't want to go back into that abdomen ever. You want to have a one-time solution, and that should be your hepatocystectomy. So if there is a stricture hepatocystectomy, that should be treated radiologically rather than surgically. That's all I have, actually. Thank you.
Questions?
You made it sound very easy. Any questions?
The routine workup which we have for cholecystectomy.
An ultrasound would definitely have been done,
Yes.
and if the ultrasound does not show a portal vein,
Right.
then you've got portal cavernoma.
This is one, but how we can say we should, this is fine, okay, if ultrasound doesn't show, that's fine. But otherwise, what are the other markers and signs and symptoms we should
Sitaram, I get his point because he is really, I mean, he is not concerned with hepatocystectomy. He is concerned if a patient comes to him with portal hypertension, signs and symptoms which he has been able to work up and diagnose, and he is contemplating cholecystectomy or primary surgery. I mean, what should they do apart from having worked up the patient initially? If he decides to go ahead with surgery or he decides otherwise. I mean, this is the dilemma in his mind, and this is the dilemma in the mind of every young surgeon, that he takes up a case for cholecystectomy and finds that there are problems other than simple cholecystectomy. I think that is the answer he wants from.
So to
Have I
answer that,
interpreted you right?
so two situations you can end up with. One situation which I have not considered at all is a situation of a cirrhotic with gallstones, and on ultrasound scan, how do you predict? I'll come to that later. I won't talk about that. Second situation is a patient whom we don't know has got extrahepatic portal venous obstruction, EHPVO, portal cavernoma, and who has got symptomatic gallstones. He has come to you with symptomatic gallstones, and you are planning cholecystectomy on him. How do you recognize it? It is very simple. On the ultrasound scan, if the sonologist has not seen a single portal vein, that patient has got a portal cavernoma. And a sonologist will report that. All sonologists will report that. They will say portal vein not seen.
But a portal cavernoma does not always mean a portal biliopathy.
It does not mean portal biliopathy.
Yeah.
No.
But that is what is our concern.
Yes, the concern is if you don't see a single portal vein and you see a portal cavernoma, that patient has a very high risk of bleeding during cholecystectomy. And this is what Ramesh says. Don't attempt laparoscopic surgery in that patient. Do an open cholecystectomy after adequate counseling.
Well, I think.
Even though I'm not a laparoscopic surgeon, but I have my reservation. Why
Well,
should it not?
I think the confusion primarily has come because this session probably has come before the next lecture which is going to come in the session, that what in terms of portal hypertension and biliary surgery, what should be your approach?
Before
Sir,
doing that-
sir, can I finish?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
taking the situation of a cirrhotic patient with portal hypertension and symptomatic gallstones, when laparoscopy is a much better option than open cholecystectomy. But mind you, it is cirrhotic patient with an intact portal vein. Cirrhotic patient, intact, not a portal cavernoma, intact portal vein, cirrhotic patient, symptomatic gallstones. Laparoscopic cholecystectomy is the way to go.
Excuse me, sir.
I hope I answered your.
We can contradict it.
No, sir, I'm not
On the
contradicting.
basis of 9,000, he says no laparoscopy.
In portal cavernomas. In portal cavernomas.
I think we are deviating from the point. We are trying to confuse the masses rather than help. Basically, the situation is far more advanced what we discussed here. What the questions you have in mind, that I have a patient with portal hypertension, cirrhosis and gallstones, and what should I do? That is going to come next. Once you have that clear in your mind that how to manage a patient of gallstone disease with portal hypertension or cirrhosis, you would be able to appreciate what they are saying. I think have some more patience. The carry home message, if I can say at this time, I don't know what the next lecture is going to say, that if in your practice you come across as a young surgeon a patient with portal hypertension or cirrhosis, gallstone disease, if you have no further exposure and experience, this is the case you should not be handling yourself. I mean, that I'm trying to make it simplified for your absorption. But please be patient. The lecture is coming next, and then your concepts would be more clear. Thank you, Sitaram. I know you both are right, but then you're adding to the confusion rather than sorting.
The last minute, Dr. Yadav tells me that he has inserted a case capsule of difficult cholecystectomy in a portal hypertension where partial cholecystectomy is done, and he is going to request Dr. Shivojit to present this particular case.
Very good morning to all the delegates and panel of judges. This is a case which has been recently done in our center. She is a 31-year-old female and is a known case of portal hypertension due to HPO. Has a recurrent episodes of vomiting, blood vomiting since 2007, and now she has become symptomatic for gallstones in 2010. And this is her baseline workup. Upper G endoscopy shows small varices and prominent duodenal veins, and there was mild lateral gastritis. And this is the imaging. Liver was normal. Multiple tortuous collateral make a point at the porta along the right and left branches of portal vein, suggestive of common, and it is compressing the common hepatic duct and common bile duct with irregular narrowing and dilution, classical of what Dr. Sinha has discussed right now. And the MRCT, which suggested main portal vein has been replaced by multiple collaterals, and there was IHBID and features of portal biliopathy. Fresh upper G endoscopy showed 2 columns of small varices at the lower end and presence of portal hypertensive gastropathy. CT abdomen suggested HPO along with portal cavernous formation, minimal ascites, and there was gallstones. And since she was having hypersplenism, she was taken up. And this is the ultrasound report, irregular bilateral central IHBID, and the same finding almost taken. And there are multiple hyperinifogens in query info and portal biliopathy again. And so the final working diagnosis is a patient of HPO with hypersplenism and now probably symptomatic gallstone and in the background of portal biliopathy. Intraoperative, coming to the intraoperative findings, and this was after stenectomy when we moved towards the region of the gallbladder, and this is pericholecystic collaterals, so hugely dilated collaterals. These are the hugely dilated collaterals. So what the surgeons decide to do, take stapes which is on the anterior wall of the gallbladder and extract the stones first, not trying to dissect the aorta or the calyx region. And through this anterior wall, this is the posterior wall of the gallbladder, this is the anterior wall. Through there, this is the lace that has been decided to sound the cystic duct to find any other leftover stones. And then this is the hemostasis that has been achieved by taking stays just on the posterior wall as well as the anterior wall. And the cystic duct opening has been, this is the sutures has been taken along, no use of cautery for hemostasis. This is the mucosa of the posterior wall, and it has been perforated totally, and the cystic duct opening has been closed with interrupted vitals under direct vision. So the take-home message here was that we did not try to dissect at the Callows triangle, number one. Number two, no use of cautery, and neither dissect the gallbladder from the cystic plate. Thank you.
The total leukocyte count was 2500 and platelet count was 64,000. And patient has massive
How
splenomegaly.
much HP?
Sir, HP was 11.
That doesn't make it symptomatic for it. What was the indication? What is the symptom?
Sir, massive splenomegaly was the symptom. No. Yes. Symptomatic massive.
Talk about
Symptomatic massive.
symptomatic hypertension, of repeated attacks of fever, bleeding episode from the gum or excess period. All these sort of things have to be taken when you talk about symptomatic hypertension. All these are not there.
This is only massive splenomegaly.
That is not a feature of. Incidentally, you have to define for all the people you should note. Hypertension is a clinical condition in which you have reduction in one or more formed elements of blood with compensatory hypertrophy of the bone marrow and all this reverting back to normal after connecting. That is the complete definition of hypertension. None of these are fulfilled by your criteria. Got it?
Yes.
So hypertension to be defined, you have to use all these characteristics. We are very casual about certain expression. This patient has hypertension. This patient has symptomatic hypertension. What is the symptom? Does it get oft-repeated attacks of infection
No, sir.
because of the low counts?
No,
I
sir.
see because of hypercoagulation problem, getting bleeding from the gums, or the venture flow, or any other site of bleeding, be it hematuria or rectal bleeding. None.
No, sir.
So please, don't think too casually.
I think the point well taken that this was not symptomatic hyperesplenism. It was incidental that this patient had gallstone disease as well as portal hypertension and hyperesplenism. And since they were operating for gallstone, the spleen was also weak. So I think the treatment part is
He made a
okay.
message in 2007.
Was there extra
Patient has
that bleeding is due to varices, not a hypersplenic.
Not because of hyperesplenism. Right, I think I would open it for discussion.
I wanted Shibojit to present the case just because there are many controversial issues I will discuss, but this case we took the pictures because I wanted the resident to see how to do a safe cholecystectomy, and that is the only purpose. The other issues which are confusing might be discussed. The thing is that the message was how to leave a posterior wall there, how to take care of the collaterals which are coming on the way in terms of when you are dissecting towards the liver and when you are going towards the porta. That was the only message. That was the only message for the region point of view. Once you are going to do a cholecystectomy, we can debate on splenectomy and all those things, please. There is no this thing that we have done some crime. But the thing is that, please, what is the purpose? I thought sir, that Dr. Ramesh was going to take up. I just quickly prepared. Many things are not answered. But the aim of this particular presentation is that the resident who is sitting there, people who are sitting there, how to do a cholecystectomy in a portal biliopathy having massive collaterals in that area. So the message was that please take stay sutures, open the gallbladder, take all stones out, make it stone free, then don't try to dissect in the cystic plate and gallbladder. Have some wall of the gallbladder there so that you can take your suture. Suture holds back. If you are going into that and collateral starts bleeding, you will be the by hell of a time. So you have a place to suture it. And then in the calyx area also, that is what is partial cholecystectomy. We have two components. One is living towards the liver, and there is not going in the calyx triangle. Detail trying to have a cystic gut. Sir was discussing that day. Dr. Ramesh was very emphatically, but portal hypertension we said we will discuss later on. So in that area also putting the lens and seeing that how much cystic gut we are living. So that is what is the message of this particular part.
Thank you, TD. I think all the three messages are important. They are not contradictory to each other. What he is saying is the technique. What he is saying is the definition of hypertension. What I said is the bottom line, that this gallbladder is not for you. You must realize that. Okay? Unless you have the expertise, unless you have the experience, unless you have worked up your patient well, and you are prepared to undertake such surgery, please don't do this gallbladder in your early stages of your career. So I think all three are right, and you should take all the three messages, not the contradiction. Thank you very much.
We're running behind schedule, so we'll start off straight away. Dr. Yadav will talk to us on algorithmic approach to carcinoma gallbladder and also incidentally detected carcinoma gallbladder. So Dr. Yadav, hope you'll be here. Any
Should I start? Sorry for coming again and again. Dr. Sadiq sir was saying you are trying to project yourself too much. Keeping pace that our not a single talk should be left untouched, and that's why there are so many mishaps happening with our some faculties. They have told us we don't know the truth. Somebody is saying something, somebody says something, so we have to. I'm not allowing any talk which is mentioned in the scientific program to be going without us. So that is what is the aim of my coming here again and again. So in an algorithmic approach, Dr. Silas Rikhande yesterday in the night only he conveyed me the message that he had some problem, he cannot come. So due apology, I said okay, thank you, and then I just changed my talk. Maybe quickly added some slides to cover the incidental carcinoma gallbladder. Sir is not happy with me for that. Please excuse me. And see the point here mentioned in the malignancy of the gallbladder, when a diagnosis can be made without exploration, no operation should be performed. And this was made much earlier. But this statement is not without reason. There has to be a reason for this. We are so disappointed with the carcinoma gallbladder and obstructive jaundice. Shivendra will have some other view, but why this view? Because we all know there is nothing new in this aggressive disease, late presentation, multiple way of study, rapid progression, early recurrence after surgery. That is important, and all these factors lead to the poor prognosis. So I have made my slides very simple and just try to see what is happening in the result of extended recession. This has to be taken by Shivan, but because to say my points, hardly any 5 years survival in all this series. And these series are from the best center. Nakino is from Nagoya group. So this is the what is the outcome, and that's why probably that first slide statement holds some merit. So Dr. Kapoor said, let's have a middle part. I don't know what is that middle part actually. So what we think, which is true for any surgery, is that selection of an appropriate patient and appropriate procedure is very important. And we should not be very pessimistic, and we should not be so aggressive
that disease should be worse than the treatment. Oh, sorry, treatment should be worse than the disease. So that's why selection of a patient is very, very important. So I have two case scenarios. It's not imaginary. 55 years female with pain abdomen. She is day 10 after hepatopancreatic duodenectomy and right hemicolectomy. As you are discharged. So we wanted to take a picture of that. She quickly prepared herself for the picture. So this is what she is going to be discharged. So if you are selecting appropriately, working hard, your team is very good, you can have this outcome. But this is not synonymous with every patient. Out of 4 operated adverse, she is the only one who has this type of outcome. So this can be an exception case, not the every. See the PET CT are the same lady. Why this is important? We are doing PET CT in every patient. Sorry, see the CT scan as done after ultrasound. Cholecystectomy is focal thickening of the gallbladder. No regional or distant metastasis. Lymphadenectomy was seen little bit. This is what is the mass lesion involving most of the part of the body and coming toward the neck. But if you see all these areas, not a very good picture, but having no major lymphadenitis except you will find in the PET scan, there was one uptake is here, one uptake is here, and this is another uptake. So this particular uptake was a retropancreatic lymph node. If you see other things, there is no spread of the disease. Staging laparoscopy, everybody does, we also do it. Laparotomy assessment, findings confirmed, noted. Decision will be taken based on the clinical profile of the patient. Anesthesia, we discussed with the anesthesia. No aortic lymph nodes, no celiac lymph nodes, no common hepatic lymph nodes. See, there was a big lymph node adhered to the pancreas posteriorly. That is what the only lymph node which was palpable in this patient. If you see the picture, right, this is a colon adhered to the gallbladder. So many times it's very difficult to assess the hepatoduodenal ligament in these type of pictures when colon and duodenum, these are true structures. Even if they are resectable, they made us life very difficult. What is the assessment of the fossa? So this was the colon adhered. If you dissect here, you are breaking the protocol of the surgery oncology. So this was the surgery done. Intraoperative findings, as I said, not much, what I have already described. This is already described. Second opinion, I always say, if I am going to operate this patient, by my friend, colleague available in the department, and we requested anesthetic, we are going to proceed for a major surgery, should I do it? He said, you can go ahead. So this is the picture. You could see this pancreatic duodenectomy. All these pictures are there. Pancreatic duodenectomy and right hemicolectomy was done. Just see the histopathology. Lymph node ratio is not very bad, 4/20. All margins are free. Chemoradiation has been given 1.5 years down the line. She is doing well. So this is case scenario number 1. So what is another case scenario? Case scenario number 2. 40 years female with pain abdomen, ultrasound cholecystectomy, thickened fundus, CT focal technique, PET scan uptake at the fundus, simple extended cholecystectomy. Not simple means without any extended cholecystectomy, which has 2 components, resecting liver and lymphadenectomy. Done. So these are the 2 different spectra. Surgical obstructive jaundice, I leave to 7. He will be taking up. So R0 resection with acceptable mortality is the algorithm. R1 resection in gallbladder, no improvement in the survival. R2 resection, sometimes you might be compared but should never be attempted. So these are the 2 algorithms when I want to decide in the beginning. So coming to our protocol, we have a protocol of ultrasound. Usually patient comes with CCT abdomen. I do to see all the anatomy. If patient has come up with the CCT abdomen, we try to cut the cost and go ahead directly with the FDG PET CT scan. Staging laparoscopy in every patient. Not a single patient I have operated in my career without staging laparoscopy. This is very, very important slide. This slide is important because the periphery we are still seeing so many people coming with the ultrasound suggesting mass lesion, even then open cholecystectomy is done. Please don't do that. That is the algorithm. If you are suspecting mass lesion, it's better to err toward the side of doing extended cholecystectomy if you are expert, rather than doing open cholecystectomy and breaching the protocol. Focal thickening in the gallbladder wall, irregular thickening. This ultrasonography had to mention wall thickening of more than 4 millimeters. If you are having a tumor like that, pseudotumor type picture, if your friend is there in the radiology department, you can ask him to do a Doppler and he will show that this is not a pseudotumor by having vessels inside the tumor. What is the aim of suspecting this? The moment you suspect this, more aggressive investigation, meaning thereby err on the side of doing a CT scan rather than doing open cholecystectomy and waiting for the histopathology. Contrast enhanced CT scan, ultrasound, very recently introduced in the PGI, and I asked one of my friends, for the benefit of me, my teaching and for this type of meetings, show me what is seen, and he showed me this one. I said, take up the picture, and I quickly added. These are the pictures everywhere you saw. I am not talking about that. So, this slide is important. Every radiologist mentions there is a thickening, do a FNAC, suggested FNAC. Please don't do this same. Because there are so many reports of settling after FNAC. So if you are suspecting gallbladder cancer, again I am emphasizing, please go ahead and do a more aggressive investigation. Please avoid FNAC in a resectable gallbladder cancer. Yesterday there was a little bit of discussion, so I am emphasizing again. FDG PET we are doing it, I will show my algorithm. This patient was resectable on CT scan. Many may not agree. See the FDG PET, and now they see the metastasis. By no stretch of imagination, you will be seeing this mets on the CT scan alone. And supraclavicular lymph nodes many have found. So I am doing as a routine, and World Congress, this data is presented last year. Dr. Anil was also there, and we have shown by this laparoscopy and the PET scan, only 8 of 108 patients were negative laparoscopy was done. So this is what is the meticulous algorithm. Surgery, R0 resection is only chance of cure, but must be done only for the cure. This statement I have taken from a Henry Bismuth article for hierarchical carcinoma. This is not mine, please. So, why we do the surgery? Extended cholecystectomy includes resecting this segment, coming to segment 5, 2 cm 3 cm margin, coming to up to this level, and up to this level, and resecting this segment 4 as a whole, lymphadenectomy. But what is the mode of the spread? Why this particular phenomena? You see this chart, I am not describing everything, but this is the way this can spread. This is again taken from slides from Professor Miyazaki. So gallbladder cancer, invasion of the hepatoduodenal ligament. Japanese people only respect. Hepatoduodenal ligament involvement is not in the AJCC. So this is very important and becomes one of the most important difficult situations sometimes in the to resect. Difficulty in accessing the hepatoduodenal ligament. Again, it's very important once duodenum is involved and once colon is involved. Sometimes we are doing resect the colon. I had once this bad experience of resecting the duodenum, but it was a sleeve resection. Then I could not resect the tumor and we closed it. So sometimes you are forced to do it in intent of having a RBU resection. Staging laparoscopy, as I said, I always do it, and all our senior colleagues and friends and teachers do it, advise them to do it. So it's avoid laparotomy. If you add ultrasound in the staging laparoscopy, then you will avoid more yield will be little bit more, about 10% yield is increased. So incision always bilateral subcostal or even midline, chevron or makuchi, depends upon. Liver, there is a controversy, anatomical or non-anatomical. Extended resection is going to get taken by another colleague. Hepatic resection, be a routine or selective. stage 4 gallbladder cancer, that treatment. So our protocol is this. We prefer anatomical resection, N1 lymphadenectomy, hepatitis resection selectively when there is a surgical obstructive jaundice, stricture or neck lesion or CD margin is positive or pyruvate tumor. Extended resection very rarely are able to do. FPD is another very rare. Lymphadenectomy, these slides are just a side, but this slide is very important. Sketched by one of the JR. So these are the group of lymph nodes we will set. I requested him to set. Here is the this lymph node. Once it is here, it becomes as bad as the autopole group of lymph nodes. So no need to resect it. So these are the group of lymph nodes you resect, and this is the algorithm for a simple resectable gallbladder cancer. Now, see, you cauterize it, you find these lymph nodes. These are the lymph nodes. Very nice sketch by Raj Sekhar, he joined neurosurgery lab. So we go here, if there is a lymph node, it seems to be involved, we took a frozen, and if involved, immediately we close. But if it is not involved, then only we proceed. So these are the few tips. Lymphadenectomy, what is our aim to achieve? Our aim is to achieve this type of picture. If you are not doing this type of lymphadenectomy, you might not be doing justice to your patient. Everybody is only concentrating on resecting the liver. The most important predictor of postoperative outcome is this particular lymph node. So it will tell you stage migration phenomena if not involved, and if involved, it will tell you the overall prognostication. Vascular anatomy, be very always careful. I will take a few minutes because I am covering the topic of Dr. Srikhande Sailesh. So with due permission of our chairpersons, I will have few slides for the this thing. Liver resection, which are anatomical, as I said, no difference. Less bile leak in the anatomical resection and neck lesions, all they require anatomical. Otherwise, there is no difference in the overall outcome. As I said, we are preferring this routinely because we find it more convenient. If you are ligating all the vessels coming from left to the right, then this particular area becomes devascularized. For segment 5, you go to the porta, dissect the right anterior branch, and from there you will find a P5 and you can ligate it. So summary of the straightforward resectable gallbladder cancer is this one, and then I will go to, I am not doing this. This is surgical obstructive jaundice is going to be covered by extended dissections, is going to be covered by Dr. Our friend Shivan. So I am just skipping all those slides. I will go directly to the, sorry, this is very important. This is very important to have this type of depth margin. You go like this. If you are going like this, then at toward the porta, you will have very limited margin. That might be positive. So you have to have a margin like this, vertical resection. So this is important. That's why we will not discussing this. You have to sample your specimen like this, and slide. The message is, even in the slightest doubt, laparoscopic cholecystectomy must not be done. Bile is rate is 30%. Then incidental gallbladder cancer. Silas has to take it. I have quickly added some slides. It can happen after open cooling. If on the table you are saying some lesion, you have to cut the specimen. Please, all surgeons must cut. All the regional please go with the message. Please cut your specimen by your own hand. Don't rely on anybody and palpate. So this is very, very important. Get a frozen if required. Up to mucosa, no further surgery, but difficult. I was talking to my friends in pathology. It is always possible that you can tell us by frozen the depth of the invasion. That's it. Many times it's not. So this is a difficult thing, but rarely you get this chance and you have to do it. If up to mucosa, all protocol, meticulous follow-up. Beyond mucosa, extended cholecystectomy. Review the frozen. 10% false positive, false negative report. So after 7 days, if again it is positive, then you call a person and do the job. So this is very, very important. And same thing, incidental gallbladder cancer, after laparoscopic cholecystectomy, get frozen, after mucosa, no meticulous follow-up, but beyond mucosa again, extended cholecystectomy. This I think I will leave to Dr. Anil. He might discuss in the panel excision of port. So I will not discuss. So I will receive this. So that same thing I am repeating this slide. So this is what is my conclusion of covering the two talks. Curative resection, not my conclusion, our conclusion based on the reports of all our senior colleagues sitting here and friends. Curative resection is only chance of cure in a gallbladder cancer, repeating the same statement. Lymph node involvement is the most important. Don't only concentrate on liver. It's the most important predictor of survival. And adjacent organ resection. Don't get hesitant. If you are achieving R0, please go ahead and resect adjacent organ resection. And I thank you and convey my greetings from PGIMR Chandigarh.
Thank you, Dr. Yadav. We'll take questions at the end of the session. We next have Dr. Shivendra talk to us about extended reflection of heart. Is it worthwhile?
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Yadav for giving me this opportunity. I will be covering the extended resection for gallbladder cancer tier 1. There is as you know, the gallbladder cancer is a major disease with dismal outcome. But recently, there are improved results with aggressive surgical approach in the last 2 decades. So gradually, the realistic approach is gradually changing to aggressive approach. So as you can see, the resectability with an aggressive surgical approach can be increased up to 20 to 40%. And you can see the unacceptable disease, the median survival is around 2 to 4 months. And 1 year survival is less than 5%. So there is a need to do an aggressive approach. If you compare with the CF bacteria, even after R0 section, 5 year survival is still only 5 to 20%. And even portal vein involvement of 5 year survival is around 7% only. And CF bacteria, everybody says that portal vein approach resection should be done. Why there is so realistic approach for gallbladder cancer in which you can achieve a 5 year survival up to 30% by aggressive approach. So I think we have to move forward to the pancreatic way and go aggressive approach for gallbladder cancer. So recently this is AJCC. Only problem with AJCC is they have not classified where to put a retropancreatic lymph node. Whether it is N2 or it goes an N1. So at present the N2 is retropancreatic is usually taken in as N2 disease. And these T1 and T2 is early gallbladder cancer and T3 or node past years taken as locally advanced gallbladder cancer. The standard resection is 2 cm wedge or anatomical resection 4B5 with lymph node resection in STL, retropancreatic, common hepatic artery and the sampling of interaortic lymph node. The standard is if interaortic is positive, one should not proceed. So what is aggressive resection? Any resection beyond the standard radical cholecystectomy is aggressive resection or extended resection for CTB. It can vary about in the extended liver resection, extended lymph node resection, and routine CVD excision or SPD. And the resection CADP with SOJ, duodenal infiltration, vascular involvement are also extended resection. Another is in the patient with parenchymal liver disease or CLD, whether you should be doing extended resection. There is also taken as an extended resection. So why there is need? Because the surgery is the only curative option in gallbladder cancer. So the one has to be aggressive if you want to treat the gallbladder cancer. The extent of liver resection can change from simple wedge to anatomical 4B5 or extended resection depending on the extent of involvement or the vascular involvement. The basis of 2 cm wedge is because most of the microbeds are seen up to 15%, 27 mm. But if you compare, there is a German cancer registry database in which they compared for wedge resection with non-anatomical 4B5. So they have found that 4B5 might be better in T2. So there is no statistical significance, but there is different survival, 5 year survival of 54% as compared to 46%. This is another study with Condor. They have compared the extended resection that is simple wedge versus non-anatomical 4B5. There is difference in survival in T2 or more. So, in my opinion, though there is no data, level 1 evidence to show which is better. So I think if liver is involved, the better is to do a anatomical 4B5 rather than doing a simple wedge. This is one of the patients in which you can see there is liver involvement, and in this patient anatomical 4B5 has been done. and this is both 36 months, no evidence of any recurrence. The extended liver resection might be required if there is extensive liver involvement, vascular involvement like hepatic artery or portal vein, or if the bile duct is involved or hilum is involved, then you need to do extended resection. But the things that should be considered is remnant liver volume. We usually take, especially in jaundice patients, it should be more than 40%, and we also use ICG at our center to select patient for extended resection. Only if ICG retention less than 15%, then only we proceed with extended resection. This is the ICG machine that we have, and it is a simple pulse oximeter like machine, and it is not very costly. This is one of the patients. You can see the extensive liver involvement is there, and you can't do this simple 4-5. In this patient, because the remnant liver volume was less, so we did a portal vein embolization. You can see the coil is there, but the tumor has progressed after 3-4 weeks. So what we did, we gave chemotherapy 3 cycles, and now the tumor has also gone decreased, and the remnant liver volume has also improved. After this, we did extended right hepatectomy, and this is 2-year follow-up, no evidence of any recurrence. This is another patient, 3 chemotherapy, there is extensive involvement. You can see this patient also received neoadjuvant chemotherapy, post 3 cycles, significant reduction in size, but still the remnant liver volume was less. We did a portal vein embolization, and after this, once the remnant liver was adequate, with the extended right hepatectomy, preserving 4A. So all these things can be done, and one has to be aggressive, and you have to use a multimodal approach to have a better outcome. Coming to lymph node dissection, this is a standard lymph node dissection. This includes dissection in the hepatoduodenal ligament, around the hepatic arteries, retropancreatic, and the sampling of the para-aortic or intra-aortic lymph nodes. The idea is to have a picture like this, no tissue in between, all the hepatic arteries should be clear, and portal vein should be clear. What should be the ideal lymph node count? The review from the SEER database said it should be more than 3 lymph nodes should be adequate, and the angle of resection up to N2 station should be done to have an adequate lymph node resection. This is a study from Dr. Chaudhary. They have found that the lymph nodal count should be at least 6, and lymph node ratio should be more than 5 to say that the identical lymph node dissection has been done. This is a same study from the MSKCC. They have also found that at least 6 lymph nodes should be dissected to have adequate staging in gallbladder cancer. Coming to the bile duct excision, so now there is enough evidence that there is no increased retrieval of lymph nodes if you do a routine bile duct excision. So our present available evidence does not support routine resection for gallbladder CBD in gallbladder cancer. This you can see all the series. They have grouped effective survival even if you do a routine bile duct excision, and there are associated complications like mastocytic. So the routine bile duct excision is not recommended in gallbladder cancer. The indication for gallbladder cancer are direct involvement, osteocystic margin, papillary tumor like this, or extensive, rarely you have extensive lymph nodes which are infiltrating the bile ducts and all, then you have to resect. And Miyazaki is the only center which recommend a routine dissection of bile duct because of their philosophy that the tumors are spread along the hepatoduodenal ligament. Coming to the gallbladder cancer with jaundice, the general perception is that a patient with jaundice in gallbladder cancer has a very poor outcome, and resectability rate is low. Definitely the resectability rate is low, and also the reason is because you have to do a PTBD. Even after doing the bleeding to jaundice, the remnant liver volume is usually less. You need to have a portal vein embolization. In our surveillance, we find many times patient is not able to afford these all processes. Go for PTBD, wait for 1 month for jaundice to come down, then have a portal vein embolization, then again wait for 4 weeks for increase in the remnant liver volume. But in the jaundice patient, if you can do R0 section, then the survival is good. Other concern is liver failure in cholestatic liver. So you have to do a preoperative biliary drainage, whether endoscopic or percutaneous, and most of the time you need a preoperative portal vein embolization. This is a series published by Nimra Group. They have done an extended section for 116 patients, and out of these 70 are associates. and the median survival even in stage 3 was 5 years survival of 33%, and even with SOJ, there were more than 3 years survival and 5 years survival. So the presence of malaria obstruction should not be taken as a sign of inoperability. This is studied published by Dr. Agarwal from GBPAN, and this has also shown that the mean disease-free survival is 23 months if you can achieve R0 section in CAGV with jaundice. This is another publication from Nagino's group, and they have found a 5 years survival 23% if you can achieve R0 section in these patients. The bottom line is you have to achieve R0 section. This is a study from China, and in this they have compared, these are the whole group of jaundice and non-jaundice patients. Definitely the survival in non-jaundice patient is better. But if you can compare the patient who have undergone R0 section, whether they are jaundice or non-jaundice, they are almost similar. So the important point is to have R0 section in jaundice patients. This is one of the patients with CAGV with jaundice underwent ERCP and stenting, and this is after stenting. And this patient underwent extended diet, modified extended diet, preserving a forehead, and this is 2-year follow-up, no evidence of meningitis. This is another patient with CAGV with jaundice, post-PTBD, underwent extended resection. So you have to be aggressive in selecting these patients for resection. Coming to adjacent visceral involvement, whether it is duodenum or stomach, colon or pancreas. The colon, if it is involved, you can do sleeve resection sometimes, or even a segmental colectomy it might be required. And the important point is, most of the time you have to either resect these patients, this part of colon or a duodenum, because you will not be assessed the hepatorenal environment unless you divide it. In gallbladder with duodenal infiltration, the impression is advanced disease with indicator of unresectable disease and the need for SPD in all patients. But I feel many times we can do a duodenal resection or a sleeve resection depending on the extent of involvement. If the involvement is duodenal is just adherent, you can resect a duodenal sleeve resection. If there is extensive involvement, you can do a distal gastrectomy with dual resection. And this is also published from GBPAN, and in this they have shown that you can achieve a mean survival of 15 months by doing a duodenal resection in these patients. This is one of the patients. You can see that duodenum is involved, and upper endoscopy showed bulge, and the area of ulceration of biopsy was negative. And on endoscopic ultrasound, there was a suspicion of duodenal infiltration. And this is the patient in which we did a distal gastrectomy and duodenal resection, and the final histopathology was T2N0, and duodenal was not actually involved. And coming to the SPD, this is a recent review of all the surgical series from the Japanese center, and they have analyzed whether the SPD is worthwhile in GB's gallbladder cancer, and they have found that the SPD has a much better outcome in cholangiocarcinomas as compared to CAGV. To say they have compared that the role of SPD is controversial because of poor long-term survival in gallbladder cancer. For cholangiocarcinoma, SPD is much better, has much better results. Coming to the vascular resection, there is no large published series of vascular resection in gallbladder cancer. We have experience of only 2 cases. This is one of the cases in which the portal mechanism was involved, and this patient underwent extended right resection with a portal vein resection and cross-section. Other issue is on extended resection is whether to do a para-aortic lymph node resection, though at present is not recommended. But there is a Japanese centers we have shown that the 5-year survival even in para-aortic lymph node can be achieved by up to 24% if you can do a complete lymph nodal clearance in the para-aortic region. In our place, we usually give neoadjuvant and then take up for these patients. And this they have compared even in the para-aortic lymph node resection positive patients, you can have a good long-term results. Coming to resection parenchymal liver disease, in child age cirrhotics, you should always proceed. This is one of the patients of PSC with a gallbladder cancer, and this patient underwent anatomical 4B5, and this is after 1 year, no evidence of meningitis. So what is the evidence? The aggressive surgery improves resectability, improves the staging, and helps achieve R0 section. Whether it improves survival. This is a series published by Kondo. They have shown that even in stage 4A, you can achieve a 5 years survival by being doing adversive resection up to 28%. This is a Japanese cancer history. They have analyzed 2,667 patients, and even in this you can see even T4 patients and 4A you can achieve a 5 years survival or 23% by doing aggressive resection. So I conclude that aggressive management of CHF will improve susceptibility as well as survival. Though you have to select patients because the morbidity will be high. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kuer, for excellent presentation. And we move on to the next speaker. Is Dr. Park, H.F. Park, and he's a talented HPV surgeon from South Korea. And he'll be presenting a video of HPV. So I invite Dr. Park.
Thank you, Chairman, for your kind introduction. Good morning. I'm Hyung-min Park from National Cancer Center of Korea. First of all, I'm appreciated to organize committee, Professor Singh and Professor Yada, for inviting me to this beautiful city and wonderful congress. My topic is HPV in GP cancer. My talk will be composed of this content. HPV is composed of liver resection and PD. You can imagine that it is extremely destructive procedure. HPV was first introduced in 80s and reported result in early 90s were morbidity more than 90% and mortality more than 25%. It means that it was very dangerous. The most frequent indication of HPV is cholangiocarcinoma, and GP cancer is the second most indication of HPV. As you see, Professor Nimra suggested various indications for HPV in GP cancer. First, liver bed type with duodenal pancreas invasion. Second, liver bed and hilum type with duodenal pancreas invasion. And third, hepatic hilum type with distal CVD invasion. And fourth, lymph node type involved in the surrounding organs. Various hepatic resections can be considered in HPV, like extended hemianectomy, resectionectomy, and segment 4B and 5 anatomical resection, wedge resection. And in high volume center, liver failure after major hepatectomy is less than 5%, and mortality after PD is also less than 5%. Then how about HPV? As I mentioned earlier, in early 90s, morbidity and mortality rate was very high. But recently, morbidity decreased to between 30 and 40%, and mortality decreased to around 10%. In 2002, Nagoya group reported 23 HPV positive cancer, and mortality was 40%. 5-year survival was only one case, but HPV shows better survival than unrestricted cases. In 2007, Kaneoka reported 10 HPV positive cancer, and morbidity 60%, and mortality 30%, and 1-year survival 20%. But no one survived over longer than 2 years. This table shows the reports of mortality and 5-year survival rate of cholangiocarcinoma and GP cancer after HPV. GP cancer after HPV since 2000 showed very low survival rate from 0 to 25%. So I think HPV should be recommended in only selected cases. I show you our data. From 2005 to 2009, we performed 7 HPV positive cancer. And major hepatectomy was 5, and no mortality, and 4 morbidity. Pancreatic fistula was developed in 3 cases. but all of them was grade A fistula. And liver failure was in 2, but they all died of hepatic failure, and they all of them recovered. And delayed gastric emptying was developed in one case. However, in terms of survival rate, 2-year survival rate was 43%, but 5-year survival rate was only 29%. So our data showed acceptable morbidity and mortality, but still low survival rate. Let me show you one case of our institution. This is CT of 56-year-old female. You can see the huge
Pointers and all.
huge It shows that huge metastatic cover lymph node, a posterior aspect of contract head, and brain mass located in GB fundus, and it seems to lack extend to outside of GB1. And we performed HP in this case, and final pathology showed adenocarcinoma moderate differentiated, and final stage was C2N1. Can you guess her long-term survival? She is still alive with disease, without disease for about 7 years. So in summary, HPD for GB cancer showed improved morbidity and mortality, but still low survival rate. So HPD for GB cancer should be considered, if possible, but in selected cases. And I'll show you the one case of video. This is video about HPD for GB back cancer or CHD cancer. "57-year-old female transferred from local hospital for rural GB cancer or CHD cancer. Her preoperative total bilirubin, alkaline phosphatase, gamma GT, C99 were elevated, but liver enzyme was normal range. On pre-op CT, both ICD related, common hepatic related, and GB distension, and mesothelial lesion on GB neck, and bile duct thickening down to CBD intrapancreatic portion. And on MRCP, we can see the abrupt termination of bile duct CHD around the cystic duct orifice. We used the upper midline incision. Usually, we use the wound protector and abdominal retractor. First, after Coco manual, lymph node number 13 was dissected.
Is there any sound?
And distal bile duct resection. And at distal dissection margin, on frozen biopsy, adenocarcinoma was present. So we decided to do HPD. And right portal vein resection. And right liver full mobilization, including caudate lobe. short hepatic vein ligation and cut. Cannulation between right and middle hepatic vein with nelaton catheter. And pancreatic resection was done. And PD specimen out. I'm sorry, I cannot show you the procedure of PD because at the time our interest was just liver resection, so we did not record the procedure of PD. And hanging method with corded blood. And mark the resection line on the rib surface along the demarcation line. Resection. And rectified resection was done. And there was no abnormal findings at proximal resection margin. And right hepatic vein is rigated and cut with endogized scapula. And reverse specimen out, and the anastomosis PJ, HJ, and GJ as conventional method. And on the closure with skin scapula. Operation froze for 9 hours and no intraoperative transfusion. The patient discharged POD 28 without major complication. And final pathology showed adenocarcinoma. Stage was 2N1 and free on resection margin. Post-operative CT showed no significant abnormal findings, and the patient is still alive without disease for 27 months. Thank you for your attention.